Hello, everybody. This is Justin Case of American Newscape, joining our new friend, coach, author, and media personality, Joel Evan, back for another installment of American Newscape, and America Awesome, for that matter. So, hello, Joel. Welcome to America Newscape.
Hey, what's going on? Great to be here.
Hey, we're excited to have you, and we had a pool whether or not I could say his last name correctly, and I'm sure every once in a while I'll get it right. So, hey. The reason I'm excited about Joel being here, I was doing some research and I came across a video of somebody else, and I saw Joel and I said, Joel is built for this audience, and there's a reason why he's built for this audience. Joel was a San Francisco police officer doing his job, taking care of his family, and he had to displace himself to Idaho. And I found that fascinating. So Joel, give us a little bit of the background on that.
Yeah, well, one thing I'll tell you is I didn't have to do anything, right? I chose to do this, and I really feel, and when people listen to my story, I always say this, is I'm being promoted and I'm being protected. So whatever's happening in my life, these are all good things. But yeah, how did a San Francisco police officer end up in Idaho? You might be asking yourself. Well, the bottom line is I worked as a police officer in California for almost 15 years. I worked for the Oakland Police Department for 6 years, and I worked for 8.5 years in San Francisco. And little did I know that I would be working in the Tenderloin District in 2013, helping drug addicts not inject themselves with needles. But in October 2021, the San Francisco Police Department was going to try to force a needle in my arm with this experimental product that we're all very familiar with. And I said I wasn't going to do it. And it was really crazy because I'll tell your audience that, when you look at the law, you're allowed exemptions, right? They have medical and religious exemptions. Well, right. San Francisco actually approved my religious exemption. And then a month later took it away and then gave me a month before they said, if you don't get this product in your arm, you're fired. And I said, I'm not going to do it. And I was really surprised, but they fired me. And I think about 70 other people. That was about out of 2,000 people, only 70 people stood up and said, we're not going to do this. And prior to that, I was living in San Francisco for almost 10 years, and there were just a lot of things that we didn't like. My wife and I, we have 2 young boys, and having my sons ask me over and over again, Dad, why are there so many homeless people in our neighborhood? Why do I have to step over needles as I'm walking to the park? Why are there so many car break-ins? And my wife and I really started to realize, we have outgrown this place and it's time to look yonder, I guess you could say. And we started looking at places and areas and states that actually embodied our values and our ideas and our culture, and wanting to raise our sons in a better environment really was all it was. And so Idaho popped on the map, and that's where we ended up.
Well, that's really cool, Joel. And the reason I was impressed by it, because that takes courage, and a lot of people don't possess that type of courage. And that, in my eyes, that makes you one of those heroes that runs around not wearing capes. So now you're out there, and you're something. I don't want to call you a shining star, but in my eyes, you're that. You took care of your family. You did what you needed to do, and right, you weren't forced. You did what you needed to do. So that's why American Newscape is excited to have you here, Joel, and you're doing some really cool stuff. The other thing I saw that I liked, you've got a podcast going on, and I think our audience is going to enjoy that too, because you use some of the similar format that I do. YouTube keeps pounding on us. You need to specialize. You need to do videos on ticks, and you got to keep doing those videos on ticks and do nothing else. And I, for one, said, well, screw that, YouTube. And Joel, you've got a variety channel too, which is pretty interesting. I mean, if you go to Joel's channel and you don't like the first video, go look at the next video, because it may be a topic you really have an interest on. And I think for everybody, take some time and investigate that channel. So tell us about your podcasting.
So yeah, about 3 years ago, I'm big, my family, we're big into natural health. And so I would go and see all these practitioners and all these holistic doctors, and they were all getting results. And I would tell other people about these things, and they had no idea what I was talking about. And I'm like, how is this possible? Like, to me, this was something that was just common knowledge. And so I thought, podcasts had given me so much good information. I thought, I want to start my own podcast and be able to give that same information back to others. So really the podcast started out, I originally called it the Hacked Life Podcast because I was interviewing I was really into the field of biohacking. And if anybody knows anything about biohacking, some people think it means like transhumanism, and I'm not into that. So please, if you're thinking that's what it is, it isn't. It really, it has nothing to do with that. Really, what it is the word bio, meaning biology, your biology, and then hacking. The term was coined by Dave Asprey, who he fixed his own body, and he had a job as a computer programmer, and so he thought of his body as a system and using hacks to hack the system to get his health back in order. So he coined the term biohacking. That's where it comes from. But really, for me, it was all about exploring more alternative health modalities and holistic modalities. And that was what I was really passionate about. So interviewing people that are in the alternative health space and doing different things like neurofeedback and ozone therapy and PEMF and cold water therapy, all these things that some of them are becoming more the norm, but man, 3 years ago, not a lot of people were talking about them. And so I wanted to expose what other doctors were doing and getting great results than the traditional Western doctor who, I'll be honest, I never see get good results. So other than they're putting you on some kind of prescription plan for a 30-year subscription, I don't really see any good results. And so those are the people I wanted to interview. And now the podcast has kind of evolved not only to alternative health people, but business people, entrepreneurs, and people that are doing higher consciousness, as I like to say. They're living at a higher consciousness. And my whole goal for the podcast is to make you 1% better every time you listen to it. So if you compound that over the years, just think how much better of a human being you can be. And that's what it's all about. So it's called The Joel Evans Show. I just made it my name, made it really simple. And this is going to give me more flexibility to, yes, I'm still going to focus on alternative health, but I also want to interview people that are being disruptive in the world and doing things different that we don't hear.
That's really cool. And, I'll give you, this is how I happened into holistic medicine. We moved to Phoenix in 1967. And I was, of course, a very small child. Within 2 weeks, the doctors had me on antihistamines, cortisone, all kinds of things for allergies, because every little kid that moves to a Phoenix breaks down with every allergy in the world because every pollen in the world lives there. And my mom was concerned about that. So she drugged me to a doctor. It was called the ARE Clinic. Those were Dr. Bill and Gladys McGarry, and Gladys is still alive. They studied directly under Casey. They said, throw out all those medications, and they were holistic doctors before their time. Dr. Bill McGarry was the first U.S. doctor who went to China and was trained in acupuncture. And as a little kid, I walked out of there and I said, Mom, I don't like those doctors. She goes, why? I said, they're voodoo doctors. And damn it, they were voodoo doctors, Joel. But as I've matured and I've gotten a semblance of intelligence, I've practiced stuff they taught me 50 years ago. And they were right then. And Gladys is still alive. She just celebrated her 103rd birthday. She still writes books, and she just had a PBS special. So she still pats me on the head like a little kid. And I love her dearly, and so does most of the world that's ever come in contact with her. So that's another thing you got going for you, Joel. You're right. We're just scratching the surface when it comes to holistic medicine. And as you do more, let's not call it medicine, let's call it health. Let's call it holistic health. Let's call it a holistic lifestyle. The more you can do for us, because now you have a new fan to your channel, the more it will help me and the more I might try to implement.
The key is this. Listen, a couple of things. Anybody, and like you mentioned, voodoo, right? It can seem voodoo. I don't care what people say about any of these modalities.
Right.
I'm about results, right?
Exactly.
So if it gets results, I don't really care what it is. And I think that's really all that matters is results. So if the Western doctor could get people results, then go to the Western doctor. But if these so-called voodoo doctors are getting results, then I'm going to go to them. The other thing I think that it's really important people need to remember is, a healthy person has as many wishes as they want. An unhealthy person has only one, and that's to be healthy. And we saw this in the pandemic, and a lot of people have experienced this. When you're on your deathbed or you're in the hospital, man, you will do anything to get out of there. I mean, that's the truth. People, you feel sad, you feel a victim, you're feeling caged. And health is one of my number one values and priorities. And that's for that exact reason. You can do more, be more, and have more impact on the world when you're in good health. And that's the truth. I mean, look at someone like Steve Jobs. That's a guy who was taken from us way too early. People would say he had all the money in the world, but he couldn't beat the cancer that he had, right? And so that's a guy who I guarantee he would give up all his money to be healthy. And so health is important.
Health is important, and so is family, and you proved that. You're concerned about your family's health. That's why you wound up in potato country. Have you visited a potato farm yet, Joel?
I think there's one like literally like across the subdivision behind us. They're everywhere. So, yeah, they're everywhere.
Well,
That's the thing. People, it's funny because you saw me on Peggy Hall's show, and most of the comments were very positive. But it's funny, you always see some of the haters and people that will hate, and it doesn't matter to me. But it's funny, one woman said, "Oh, well, it must be easy for him because he had lots of money or all these things." And it's just funny because I'm like, really? Well, come see my credit card bills. You don't see any of that. And we all make choices, right? I've had to make huge choices, and my wife grew up in San Francisco, and we had to leave family and people behind. And so I'm not saying it was easy, and it wasn't just something I did on a whim, but when I wrote down the pros and the cons, this is just where that part was easy at the end of the day, right? And that part was easy because then I was very clear on my vision and where I wanted to go. And when I had clarity, then I understood what was necessary. And a lot of people, I think, aren't clear on where they want to go. They don't have a North Star. They don't know what their values are. They don't know what their vision is. They don't even know who they are. So it's really difficult to align with your truth when you're not even sure about that or who it is or who you stand for. And when you don't know what you stand for, then how can you be courageous? You mentioned that I was courageous. Yeah, and I think a lot of us are looking for some hero and we're thinking of dashing courage. But there's also this idea of spiritual courage and people walking in faith and standing up for something that's bigger than them. And I'll just say this, having a conviction stronger than your desire to please. That's what I had inside of me. Walk away from a job that was going to pay me $200,000 a year and pretty much lose everything at the drop of a hat. And then go all in my coaching business and hope that it works, right? Like there's a lot of faith in there. There's a lot of heartaches and a lot of things I had to go. And again, you said displacing my family, a lot of things like that, a lot of unknowns. But I was willing to do that because I had a stronger conviction than any desire to please.
and I would be willing to bet that both you and your wife and your family, your kids, are happier where you are now because there's a logic to it. I mean, there's a not necessarily a means to an end, but it actually makes sense. Even if the kids moved there without friends, now they're starting to understand why. And see, that's a beautiful gift you've given them. And your grandkids are going to recognize that. Old crazy Grandpa Joel picked up from that crazy town San Francisco, that country called California, and lo and behold, he took the family, and that's what they'll call it. They took the family, they loaded up the truck, and they moved to Idaho. And you did that. And I think that's why I'm proud of you. People, most of my fans don't know I came to the deserts of California because I had to leave my career behind in Phoenix because of a resected lung surgery years previous and the carbon monoxide levels. I had to leave those carbon monoxide levels. And I had to live in the desert because I've got so much arthritis from athletic injury that I didn't have a lot of places to go. And I still had to commute to LA and Phoenix and Las Vegas. And I wound up here. And it was probably the best decision I made because it was that lifestyle I needed, if that makes sense. I am in agricultural country. Both sides of my family grew up in the black earth country of Iowa. And when we see black earth, you see those black tornadoes in Iowa, it's because the earth is black because there's so many nutrients in it. So I think the longer you're in Idaho, the happier you're going to be. And maybe I've become too big a fan too fast, but kudos to you, Joel. I mean, kudos to you, and kudos for making the right decision. But it's still courageous, and it'll look courageous to others, and it just made sense to you.
Yeah, and you know what's funny? At the moment when it all happened, when it all went down, I didn't think I was courageous. I was scared, like many other people. But I'll tell you what. Now, having gone through it, and now having some distance from the moment, and being able to look back a year and a half later, almost 2 years, looking back at it, I can say, man, there's not many people that would have done that. And I know the numbers. I actually saw the numbers. Like I said, there's probably 70 out of 2,000 people. And when people were told they're going to lose their job if they don't get this, I was on text threads with many people saying, I'm sorry, I have to do this. And I was empathetic at the time of these people having to go. And I get it. I understand they have a mortgage. They had a kid on the way, all these things. But the reality is, if we had stood up in a mass and we had protested and we had said, we're not going to do this as a group, this would have never happened. Nobody would have been fired. And I know this because I watched other groups and other departments, such as the Los Angeles Police Department and others, where they stood together and they bonded. Now, LA, as you know, is just as political. They did some pretty crazy things during the pandemic. They're just as crazy as San Francisco, but I'll tell you what, not a single cop was fired because there were so many of them. It would have been an absolute political disaster for them to fire 2,000 Los Angeles police officers, and they weren't going to do it. And so we saw that around the country. It had nothing to do with the science, or it had nothing to do with religion. It had everything to do with politics. And so now looking back, I really do wish people would have stood up. The other thing, though, too, is when you talk about courage, I mean, I know some of the toughest people, or so-called toughest, that I thought were tough and strong and courageous, not many of them did what I did and a couple others. And now the people that I know that actually did that, I go, man, who I'm friends with, I think, man, that when someone says I have your back, there's only now I can think of a handful of people in my phone. Now I really know who's true. And so, yeah, it has shed some light on that idea of courage. And it's made me really think, too, just seeing how a lot of the business people and the CEOs and the people that I associate with, and really evaluating their courage, because so many of these so-called CEOs and leaders will simply sell out to a very small vocal mob, and they won't do what's right. They'll simply do what's easy. And that's sad. And so it's really taught me, I think, about leadership and what kind of leader I want to be in the future. And I'm really grateful for that. I'm really grateful that I didn't maybe have I was only a police officer. I'm really glad I didn't have maybe a higher position, a sergeant or lieutenant or someone. I don't know. Maybe I would have thought differently. Maybe I would have been like, well, I need to hold on to this job because of this title. And I think so many people think that because they have these titles, these labels, they think they need to hold on to it. And I'm glad that I was never persuaded by that, because none of that mattered to me. And I think I'm going to I think what I've learned in my life through this experience is the true book about leadership. I'm living and breathing it, something that these so-called leaders who they read books and they talk about it in a classroom, they could never get, because they still live a fake, false life, if that makes sense.
Well, no, it really does. And what gift you've given to yourself, and what our fans hear me say way too often is that face in the mirror. You have to face yourself every morning. You need to determine what your intentions are. And you're able to do that. And how the others can do it now, having succumbed, I don't understand. But there again, my values, your values, their values are entirely different.
Yeah, amen to that.
And you talk about politics. I never believed it was about politics. It was about money. And it was about big, big money.
Yeah.
But we don't need to go into that. Now, Joel, the reason I got you here is I want you to talk about, Joel was also an author. Imagine that. A beat cop, became a coach, and now an author. And let's talk about your book. And your book's called Ignite. And,
Right here.
well, I've got it right here too. So let's get it up there. There's Ignite. I read some of the prefaces of it, Joel, and it goes a lot, some of the lines that we already talked about: holistic, health. Why did I start taking acidophilus when I was 10 years old, and still take acidophilus? There's a lot of these things. So, Joel, why don't you talk to us about your inspiration to write the book and what the book's all about?
Yeah, thanks. So here's the deal. My background is studying I was a life coach and a health coach, and all my mentors in health coaching were naturopaths. And so I really always looked at the body from root cause levels. I'm not here to give you a supplement or band-aid solution. I really want to go deep and figure out what is the underlying root cause. And so when I launched my business, my coaching business, my business coach said, Joel, you got to niche down. And every business coach tells their students, you got to niche down, you got to niche down. And I was like any new novice. I said, but I can help everybody, whether it's mindset or weight loss or detox. I can do it all. Gut health. I got it all covered, coach. He's like, yeah, well, you're never going to get a customer. So that's great. But you're not Tony Robbins, so you can't help everybody. So I want you to niche down. So I said, oh, you know what? I'm going to do weight loss. I think I can do that. I think I can do it well. And I never was a weight loss coach, okay? I want to just say that. Like, I don't tell people to count macros. I don't tell them to count calories. I don't tell them to go out and exercise more and eat less. Don't get me wrong. A lot of those principles are good, and a lot of them get results. So I'm not against that. And if you want that kind of coach, go for that person, because that's great. But I really like to attack the body from mind, body, spirit, and really dive into that and get to the root cause, like I mentioned. So the book really is a compilation of, after my first year and a half of being fired and out there on my own, launching my own business and working with hundreds of people, was seeing common threads and themes with everybody and how they got better. And so I really bring this into this book. You know, we are really facing a crisis. I talk about this in the beginning of the book. Right now, only 6.8% of Americans are metabolically healthy. That's a travesty. That means 93% or so are sick and not well. And when we looked at the pandemic, especially, there were studies showing who was in the hospital the most and actually fared the worst. 70% of them, I believe, were metabolically unhealthy, meaning cardiovascular disease, diabetes, prediabetes, high blood pressure, cholesterol. All of these are in that encompassing metabolic health, right? And so I wanted to help make a dent in that space, knowing that it's such a huge, huge problem. And I think it's just a lot easier than we make it. And so the book dives in. The first 2 chapters are all about mindset. Some of the things we were just talking about. You're talking about courage. Well, listen, everybody that came to me, whenever I would get on calls with them, hundreds and hundreds of people I'd get on calls, because not everybody signed up with me. And I'd ask them, why do you have a weight loss problem? What is at the root cause? You know what they would tell me? They would never say, oh, you know what, Joel, it's because I don't exercise enough, or I eat too much. They would all say to me that I'm not consistent and I'm not committed. And that's a mindset problem. And so that's why I go so deep on the mindset, values, vision. And we get into that in the beginning of the book, limiting beliefs. Then I move through some of the things that everyone wants to know about. Cravings, why do they happen from a neurotransmitter level? And I break that down. I've had some amazing people on my podcast that schooled me on this. I didn't even know about it. And so they told me about different neurotransmitters like dopamine and the opioid pathway and how you can use that to your advantage to actually blunt cravings. So we get into that. We get into why habits and how to form them and make them sticky so that you can rinse and repeat this over time. One of my favorite chapters is on detox, which I don't think any weight loss coach, for that matter, talks about. And they don't even, most of them will poo-poo on it and say, you don't need to do detox. But here's the thing. Most of the people I see that come to me, they're inflamed. And their weight loss issues have nothing to do with, again, eating less and exercising more. Many of them are experiencing this toxic water weight. And we are being bombarded right now by 86,000 man-made chemicals. If you go to the Environmental Protection Agency's website, they will tell you this. It's right there in the front page. And so these toxins have to be, if our body gets overwhelmed by them, and the liver can't keep up with it, and it can't filter it out, it stuffs them in your fat cells. And so that's why you see all these people looking puffy and swollen. And so when we open up those drainage and detox pathways by supporting the liver, guess what? People not only feel better, they feel less inflamed, but they lose 20, 25 pounds if they have to lose it. I've seen that happen over and over again. So I talk about detox. Of course, I'll talk about the right nutrition and some of the best diets out there and what those components should contain. I get into weightlifting, but really to the fact, and I've been embodying this principle for the last almost 10 years of my life, which is I only work out 10 to 20 minutes a day. That's it. And people are like, no way, that's impossible. I don't go to a gym. I don't have a gym membership. And so I've interviewed some pretty high level people who said it's possible to only work out 10 minutes a day and build muscle. And so I share some of these tips in the book, as well as some of the mindset and some of the nutrition things, and it's all there. And that's why I think it's going to be really good and help a lot of people.
Well, and one thing I'd add to that, not that I have much of a background in it, but environmental health, people, if you drink bottled water, if you have an air filter in your home and you live in a community like Los Angeles or New York or Chicago, the carcinogens and the pollutants, you don't need to worry about the city water. You need to worry about the air that you're breathing, because you are absorbing that. You know, Joel and I are both blessed. We live in rural communities where the air pollution is dramatically lower. And I would contend you felt better after a month of living in that air in Idaho than living in San Francisco.
That's a good point. I don't know. I don't know if I noticed too much of a difference there. I'll say the one advantage of San Francisco, even though it's a dense city, is that the air quality, I think, overall was good because of the bay that we were surrounded by. And I think that helped. What didn't help, though, were the California fires. So I definitely got farther away from that, which was a blessing.
Well, people need to recognize, and you're exactly right, and you speak to a lot of points. Helping people feel good about jumping into your type of program or working with you is a good thing, because once they dump those toxins, it's mental health. Their esteem is going to be dramatically changed. They're going to feel better. They're going to have more energy. And once they jump in, they're going to stay with you. And you can show them the promised land, so to speak. You can show them a healthier lifestyle. And that's why you only have to work out 20 minutes to keep that physique and that athletic build of yours. When I was lifting weights, it was comprised like 3 hours every day.
I've been there. And when I was 18 and I really started getting into lifting weights, that's what I did too. I didn't know any better. I had a Muscle and Fitness magazine subscription for the first 3 years of my life when I was in the gym. And I voraciously read whoever was doing it. Dorian Yates, I'm sure you know all these names that I'm going to throw out. Ronnie Coleman, Jay Cutler, all these guys. Flex Wheeler. I would just read whatever they did and I would just replicate that. And their program, and the typical bodybuilding isolation program, is like back and buys. And you would do legs the next day, and then chest and back. And that was like a 3, and then you would rinse, and then you would do the next thing the next 3 days. Mm-hmm. And so you were in the gym at least 60 minutes a day, right? Plus you had cardio and abs and all that. That was a typical bodybuilding split. And I would do that. I did that for years, and probably until I was 25. And that was when I first got hired at the police department. And then I started moving into functional, like lifts, sandbags, and kettlebells, all that kind of fun stuff. But then, like many of us, when I first had kids in my early 30s, that was when all of the gym memberships, all the functional training, all that kind of went out the window. And I had to look for how can I get the most bang for my buck in 10 to 20 minutes, because that's the only amount of time I had. And I'll tell people right now, they say, no way do you work out 10 to 20 minutes. Really, I do. But the key is I'm very focused on those 10 to 20 minutes on what I'm doing. And I make sure I'm stimulating the right hormones. Hormones is a big thing. And I'm stimulating testosterone and growth hormone, which is going to help build muscle and burn body fat. And I'm just consistent. People, that's the thing. I'm very consistent. And remember, I told you at the beginning of this, people always came to me and said, well, I'm not consistent and I'm not committed. That's something I don't have a problem with. And I think that's what's really helped me. Even though in only 10 to 20 minutes a day, because I'm so damn consistent, I'm able to, quote unquote, look like this, right?
Well, you are, Joel, and you are a wonderful example to a lot of people. And I am your biggest fan now, still being even old, still 6'7". I am your biggest fan. I feel confident.
That means a lot. Thank you.
Joel, I want you to promise to come back. You have so much more to talk to, and I think you have so much more you can enhance our channel with. And is there anything else we can do for you? We're going to drive everybody to your channel, to your website, to your podcast. But before we leave, why don't you give us a couple key thoughts that you'd like us to hold close to our hearts moving forward?
Yeah, thank you. I would say this is, Yeah, if anybody wants to just stay connected with me, go follow me on Instagram. As long as they have me on there before they boot me off for some reason. But I'm at Joel Evan Coaching on Instagram. Shoot me a DM or shoot me an email, info at Joel Evan Coaching. It's really me. Love to connect with everybody there. I think the book is Ignite is still on the Kindle store for 99 cents. So you can go get the book there. And then the last thing I would just tell everybody, and we talked about this earlier, man, something that's really just resonated with me over the last 2 years is your truth and staying aligned with that, because nothing vibrates faster than the truth. And so when you are aligned with your truth, so many amazing things will happen. You'll connect with the right people. You will have more impact in the world. You will do more. You will be more. And that's what it's all really about. And if you don't know what your truth is, then I would tell you to start doing some searching and find out what it is, because a lot of people are really trying to get something else, right? Maybe they're even goal oriented. I'm a goal oriented person, but maybe they're like struggling and they're just pushing and they're just always trying to get something. And you're not going to get anything. You just need to be what it is that you really want. And most of us get in the way of that. And I think that the universe, God, whatever you believe in, really has some amazing things planned in it for us. But we get in the way. We're the ones blocking and interfering with that energy. So my advice is figure out what you're doing to cause that interference and get out of the way so that you can align with your truth and really start to have impact and connect with the world in the way you want to.
Hey, wonderful sentiment, Joel. We're gonna leave everybody on that. Hey, everybody, this has been Justin Case and Joel Evan, bringing you American Awesome. Thanks for joining us. Remember, additional information and links are provided in this video's Read More. Today is the day to subscribe to this channel. Please learn more about Joel Evan and join us at the Cool Kids table.